Hello, welcome to Possibilities Cafe podcast. This is episode 46, The Shadow of Shame, and I'm Karen Barno, your host. Possibilities Cafe was developed to help women over 50 decide what's next. What are they ready to accomplish next in their life? Keeping in mind that a lot of times leading up to what's next, they weren't completely and totally in charge of what they were able to do moving forward. A lot of people took jobs based on availability, childcare, a whole host of stuff. And it kind of led to, this is what I'm okay at, I'm pretty good at, but what am I great at? That's really what women, when they hit 50, start seeking. But too many women have shadows. And I kind of just quickly review what a shadow is. It's the pieces, the parts of us that have been pushed down into the unconscious. It's the parts we're insecure about, we're ashamed of, frustrated, feel shame about it. So we repress these pieces. And the shadow is based on the fact that we bury these parts of our personality because we fear they're not welcomed. Nobody will like us. Nobody will like the shadow. And what we end up finding out is, in short, our shadows are the pieces of us that we don't want to show to others, that we want to stay repressed. However, the shadow self is usually the part of us that is who we are in our true authentic self. And it's usually in a very positive way, that piece of us that we've learned to repress. So usually wrapped around your shadow is your gift of why. Or when you ask why, you find out what your shadow is and you begin to heal it. And within that is really who you are at your essence, who you are at your core. It just, it's that big piece of your personality, again, that people didn't like, they didn't accept, or you didn't like, or you felt shame. And that's why I want to talk to you today about the shadow of shame. I see too many women, I coach too many women who feel shame of their past. Shame of their past, of things that maybe they were in control of, but maybe they weren't. Too many of us and too many women have some form of trauma. It could be physical trauma, sexual trauma, emotional trauma, verbal trauma. And from that trauma, we start burying stuff away. We start hiding pieces of ourselves because they weren't acceptable to somebody else. And then we walk around with this shame. And shame shows up in so many ways. Shame shows up in how you handle your money. Maybe you feel shameful that you have too much money or not enough money. It could show up in how you raise your children. You feel shame because you couldn't give your children what you didn't have or what you did have. Shame rears its head in so many ways. And I find that it clearly is one of the keys that hold women back. You can meet the most powerful woman, and then as I'm coaching her, I'll find out how much shame she has. And for a lot of women, it's shame around their parents and shame around money, because those just seems to be the two hot buttons when we were growing up, especially our generation, women over 50. That, it was a hot button for us, because if we started making money, people are like, well, what are you doing to make that kind of money? Like we were doing some nefarious thing to make this money. So you start feeling shame about it. Or you feel shame because you're making money, but your friends aren't. Or you feel shame because you were abused as a child and you feel like you played a key role in it. When really you were the abusee, you feel like you participated in it because your abuser made you feel guilty. Or if you were physically abused or emotionally abused, these abusers always made it seem like it was your fault, because it could never be your abuser's fault. It had to always be your fault. And because of this, that became ingrained in you, and you walk around with this shame. And how shame shows, it could show through, it's kind of how you beat yourself up. Do you drink to forget, and then you get up the next morning hungover and you beat yourself up about it? Do you spend money you don't have trying to find answers from people that really probably can't give you the answers because they're not qualified, or you don't really know what you're looking for, and you end up in debt? Do you have closets and closets and closets and closets of clothes or shoes that you don't need, but you feel it'll heal this piece of your soul? When you have shame, you're constantly trying to heal that part of your soul. You're constantly trying to make yourself feel better. When really the only way you're going to feel better is if you sit down and begin to heal the shadow of shame. If you take the time to look inside and say, okay, why? The first question always, always, always when you're doing shadow work is why? Journaling and why. Get out a journal and start asking, why do I feel shameful? And a lot of times you don't know it's shame. So the question is, why do I do blank? Why do I spend money I don't have? Why do I drink too much? Why do I buy too many shoes? Why do I constantly put myself down? Why am I in a relationship or a marriage with an unsupportive husband or spouse who adds to your shame? Because when you have the shadow of shame, you always try to keep people around you that will keep you in that feeling, because that's the emotion you're comfortable with. So if you are successful women, which most of you guys are, I mean, my audience are women who make over $50,000, $60,000 a year, who are in middle management and above. You will keep somebody around you. So when you get too high, when you're doing things, like during COVID, I had one client who was doing amazing things for her company. She was in her zone, not zone of COVID, but she knew how to rally troops. She knew how to do the research. She knew how to find the next thing that would help take care of the residents and the next thing that would help with their staff. But there was always that person in her life. And I was fascinated when I realized this, that keeps her in shame. Whether it's, again, the relationship you're in, a lot of times, women that carry shame keep themselves in relationships with people that put them down. That, and it may not be obvious at first, but all of a sudden you'll notice that they'll say little digs at them. They'll come home and they're really excited and they'll be like, well, I don't know why you're excited. People out there, catastrophic events are taking place. They always have somebody in their life that puts them down or reminds them that they should remain in shame. So they try to stay just even kill. They try not to get too high or get too low. They just stay even, because if they go too low, then they end up in shame, and whatever their fallback is, whatever it is that they do to keep them, make themselves feel better. So it's kind of like this crazy eight. And Carl Jung I think he called it a crazy eight, where you get into this loop and, picture an infinity loop. And over here, you feel good on it. And over here, you feel like crap. And you just keep going back and forth. You keep, and this is not a podcast. As I move my hand, picture an infinity symbol. And moving on the side, and on the left side is you feel really great. And on the right side, you don't feel great at all. You feel really bad. And you just bounce back and forth between that. So you're either too high or too low. It's hard for you to stay middle ground because you have so much shame going. So first of all, you want to figure out where the shame came from, and just sit with it and ask, and just keep why. If you ask enough whys, you'll find out. Now, I am a professional shadow hunter. I have spent years hunting shadows for myself and clients. So one of my crazy superpowers is I can see people's shadows. I mean, if they want me to help them with their shadow, no worry, because I can see it way before they can. Now, I certainly don't tell you what it is, because you've got to figure this out for yourself. But I can help guide you to find your shadow. So if you're interested, check out my website, Karen Barno, or I have a program, Become Your Most Powerful Self. Check it out. But once you figure out where the shame is coming from, and it could be something, I had one client that when she was, I want to say she was 14, 15, she was out with a girlfriend and they didn't have any money and they wanted some candy. This was many years ago, because she's in her late 50s. She wanted some candy. So they stole it. They each stole a candy bar. She has, since that day, carried shame with her. And she has done everything she can to sabotage her success. Now, again, most of you women that I work with are successful, but in some way you sabotage it. You'll get just successful enough for your comfort zone, whether your success is at 150, 200, 300, 500, a million, or whether your success is, vice president, but not CEO, or CEO, but not, of a large company. Wherever that line is drawn for you. And we worked together, and she did the work to heal that shame of stealing something, because she always considered herself a thief. And she would take little things as she got older, not, just inconsequential, like stealing a pencil from the office, or, not tipping, just stuff like that, to keep herself in shame. And that's how shame works. So look at the pattern that you run. If you're always feeling bad about yourself, and you get yourself to this point and you can't get any further, you have to look to see what's hiding there. What's the shadow? Is it the shadow of shame? If it is, let's work together. Let's get that healed. Or again, just sit down, right? Why? Why do you have that shadow of shame? Where does it come from? For some of my clients, as soon as they find out where it comes from, they're done. They're healed. They're good, because they didn't realize it was that repressed, that deep within them. And once they were able to pull it out and say, okay, I took a candy bar. I feel bad about that. You want me to call the place? It wasn't that big of a deal. But in my other client's mind, she made it a huge deal. It was a sin against the universe. It was, to her, it was, I think, 5-cent candy bar back then. You would have thought she stole a car. That's how she built this in her mind. So if you're not making the progress you want to make, if you're not getting to where you want to go, sit down and ask yourself, what shadow is hiding within? What am I ashamed of? What was unacceptable? Because sometimes shadows are also what's unacceptable to those around you. I still am, act like I wasn't. I have a large personality. I'm a talker, and I love to help people heal. So I'm a talker and a teacher. I love to help people heal. My mother never liked the fact that I was the center of attention, because when she was the center of attention as a child, it worked out very negatively for her. And I could go through all her shadows. And I really should one day, to just kind of explain how shadows build upon, and how it creates a sadly unhappy life. Just look at what you're insecure about. What are you ashamed about? Ask friends. A lot of times your friends will be like, yeah, I don't know why you don't dress like this or act like this, or I don't know why you're frustrated with this. But you can also think back, what were you told as a child about your personality that people didn't like? Because people love to tell you what they don't like. So think back, what was it that, maybe your dad said, you're never going to be as smart as your brother, or, you're always going to be fat. You're just going to always be fat. So why bother dieting? You're going to be fat just get with whoever you can get with. We were told that as children. We were told all kinds of things because it was acceptable. We were watching, kind of a little sidebar here, but my husband was watching Perry Mason, the old one, way back when. And I told him, I said, this show, Perry Mason, single-handedly has set women back decades. Now you look at it, and on the front, Della Street, I think her name is, was this powerful secretary and took care of him and did everything for him. And they alluded that she was on equal footing, but all the women in the show were bimbos or side pieces. It's fascinating to watch, and it was acceptable. And maybe as a child, you watched that show. And maybe as a child, your parents loved that show. My parents loved that show because they liked how he was able to solve the crime and how smart he was. And my mom loved Della Street because she was a smart personal assistant. My mom was also that. So she loved the way that she was in her power. But subconsciously, they're watching all these women be put down. So when go look at that show, and they'll probably help you find a shadow or two. And then ask yourself why. Why is it there? Because when you can bring the shadow out in the light, you can heal it. Because once you see it, you take the power away from it. You take the hurt away from it, and you can heal it. And like I said, if you need any help, just let me know. DM me. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You can jump over and join my free Facebook group, Women Over 50, What's Next, where we talk about shadows. You can check me out on TikTok. I'm having a blast on TikTok. But just let me know how I can help you. I am here to serve. I spent, I'm 63 now. I have spent years repressing my true self because of shadows. Because, my mother didn't like me being the center of attention. I was abused as a child. So I carried that shame. Carrying the shame of something that happened to me, not by me. That's the other thing. Shame happened to you, not by you. And even if it happened by you, it's because something around you had you do it. So get out of shame. Stop living in shame. Nobody was put on this universe to live in shame. Get that shadow healed. Let's work together, get it healed. Whatever I can do to assist you, let me know, because I want every woman to walk in their most powerful self and to find their blue rose and step into who they're meant to be. So I hope this helped you. Here's to you finding your blue rose, and you guys have a great day.